Thank you, Geoff, Maryanne, and Josh, for joining us today to talk about government modernization and working with technology to improve the lives of New York State, New York City residents, and all of us, the public. And maybe we'll talk a little bit more about this idea of relationships and trusts, which each of you mentioned. And when it comes to our technology and data, we need to be able to trust who we're giving our information to, especially over the internet. What do each of you need? What does the state need from the city? What does the private sector need from the public sector? Talk to us a little bit about the relationships that you have within your agencies and how it can be better. What do you need from each other to have this relationship and build upon it?
Well, I think the first thing is at the human level, the trust, right? The leaders need to understand each other, what they're trying to get to, so that they can serve the public. And then trust goes into the systems, the security, how do they trust each other that the data is going to transfer the right way. But I think it all starts back to something Maryanne said earlier, is it's the human relationships. And then once you have that, I think a lot of the barriers get broken down. Hi, my name is Geoff Plante. I'm KPMG's lead partner for New York State. I spend a lot of time with my clients helping them really transform their back office business processes and also their customer-centric business processes, helping them with accounting systems, procurement, retirement, really helping them meet their customers' needs in the shift from a lot of paper-based technology systems to new technology, new cloud technology, and how they really meet that demand in a more real-time manner.
Including people with the lived experience, the people whose data it actually is. And when we've done that on a couple of occasions, especially with young people, young homeless adolescents, when we've had them opine and think about things, it's really been very rich and robust in how we're thinking about the data as opposed to how we're seeing the data when we're looking at trajectories of where they were at one point in time and how they lived through the systems of our health and human service agencies. Hello, my name is Maryanne Schretzman. I'm the Executive Director of the Center of Innovation through Data Intelligence, otherwise known as CIDI. And we're at the Deputy Mayor's Office of Strategic Initiatives under Deputy Mayor Sheena Wright. And our role is to work with Health and Human Services and to figure out what's some of the best strategies that we can use to inform the work and to change what's going on in our systems that's not working as well as we would like to.
And so now everything we think of and everything we do is kind of wed to the notion of this has to be able to be something that we can access anywhere, anytime, regardless of what we're doing or why, because that's the way the public sector workforce has had to migrate. I'm Josh Klemm, Chief Information Officer of the New York State Thruway Authority. We are responsible for 570 miles of roadway, as well as the fiber optic backbone that runs alongside it. So we have a variety of partnerships, not only with the city, but with the private sector as well. When it comes to things like data sharing, on a daily basis, there are millions of transactions that occur on the Thruway for EasyPass. We share those transactions with our partners, the Port Authority and the MTA, to make sure that we all have the best information available to keep our organizations running efficiently. Additionally, we partner with private sector parties to enable that capture of data and that transfer of data. And we also have private sector parties who ride our fiber optics to provide internet services to the residents of New York.
It's just interesting as I think about what we're talking about. It's exciting, that's why I'm smiling. But also we talked about how relationships are so important and showing up and collaborating and brainstorming to come up with the next idea, but yet we're seeing, especially during the pandemic, we relied so heavily on technology. People are still working from home and not collaborating in the same way that they were. And as technology exponentially increases, does the interpersonal relationships decrease? How are we seeing that adjustment?
Absolutely. And we've seen that. In some ways, you're creating relationships you didn't have because of the geographic barriers and the time to travel. But on the other side, you do see, as we say, the hallway conversations, the one-offs that don't happen when you walk down the hall or you sit in the room before or after. So we have found that, and we're trying to solve that issue where it becomes transactional versus interpersonal.
I do think in the public sector, we had to respond to the challenges of the pandemic and moving to a remote workforce in a way that a lot of our private sector peers had already sort of done by being facilitative of regionalized and remote work efforts. And for us, that meant fully responding to it, enabling a remote workforce and then making that a cornerstone of how we operate going forward, knowing that we need to be able to give our staff and our citizens the tools and the solutions they need where they are. And so now everything we think of and everything we do is kind of wed to the notion of this has to be able to be something that we can access anywhere, anytime, regardless of what we're doing or why, because that's the way the public sector workforce has had to migrate. I think one of the things that the public sector could pick up on from their private sector partners is that appetite for continuous improvement, continuous delivery, and not settling for the status quo. I think during COVID, we saw the ability to quickly and readily deploy relationships, partnerships, data sharing agreements, MOUs with other entities that wasn't there pre-COVID. You know, things that maybe took years were getting done in days. And I think we have to embrace keeping that as the baseline for how the public sector operates in order to better be able to engage with our colleagues in public and private sector.
And I think working with the public officials is people are used to their apps constantly evolving and not putting out the perfect app that you never get to. Put it out there, evolve it, put another release through the App Store. And I think that's starting to happen, and they're realizing that's the best way to serve the public, and they're used to it. If you really look at how you organize your normal day, you're using apps for everything. We're just talking how no one uses cash anymore. And really, that's the experience your citizens want from the government. They want to be able to, whether it's on the Thruway, do something touchless, go into a kiosk and with their medical records or DMV. They really want to be able to take and have the same experience they have in the private sector with the public sector and use that technology.
And Geoff mentioned the Excelsior Pass. I think that's a great example of, during COVID, we were able to build those relationships quickly. We were able to launch technology solutions quickly in response to a need the entirety of the state had. And I think that collaboration with the private sector and that collaboration with our other public sector peers and colleagues that did not occur at the same pace has to continue to be that flexible, that fluid, and that open so that we can continue to deliver at the pace of consumer demand. The public sector has to hold itself to the same standards of delivery of a product that the private sector does. And the best way for us to do that is to continue using the foundation we built during COVID as the platform for how we work going forward. Well, I think we can't have a conversation on cybersecurity in New York State today or in the public sector today and not mention Governor Hochul's JSOC initiatives. There is a massive effort being taken right now for all state entities, all public sector entities at all levels to come together as it pertains to cybersecurity and protect the data we have as a state. You know, we're sharing information with each other on real-time threats. We're collaborating on responding to said threats. And the JSOC initiative, I believe, is going to push New York to the forefront of cybersecurity in the country. So those efforts that she's teed up are absolutely going to be the thing that helps us to solve those problems in the future.
Relationships matter, and relationships matter because that's where we get to build trust. And in building trust and having relationships and mechanisms to build those relationships with work groups and team groups is where we get the innovation coming from. And that also is where we get to understand when there's resistance to a concept or there's a real obstacle to a concept. So, and they're different. And so that we don't just jump that somebody doesn't want to cooperate, but we have an understanding of what it is that's going on that is impacting that cooperation. And when we're able to understand and have that dialogue, that's where we get a lot of creativity going. And that is when we start to see that certain technologies can be used that wouldn't have been used before because people understand.